London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof Coffee.
Right. And now we're seeing interesting things where, we had Kaiser in here talking about doing a crowdfunding run for George Galloway running for mayor. And then you can do it in Bitcoins. And now you can get people contributing to a political party. And can you imagine a Kickstarter campaign where it's like Galloway just did £1 million and it's like, well, that's not fair. Well, what can you crowdfund? And then it starts getting interesting.
Oh, just all kinds of craziness.
So you think for refugees, there's a real need for that cryptocurrency?
It's not just refugees, right?
Okay.
Anybody who lives in a country that has a shit government would prefer to get a currency instrument that was produced by a not shit vendor.
Okay, which is why we saw in Russia, then people would hoard dollars.
Dollars.
Black market
gold,
dollars. Something,
Swiss francs.
Something you can be sure of.
So you can think of Bitcoin as being like the poor man's Swiss franc, right?
Okay.
There is no reason that you can't get Bitcoin off a smartphone in an African refugee camp and use it for paying for your web hosting services, where you're running a little business to pay for your kids' education. Right? Because the government can't say no, the currency control can't say no, the people that won't acknowledge that you exist as a human being enough to give you a bank account can't say no, right?
Right.
So for people that are unserved by the state and unserved by the system, things like Bitcoin are potentially huge breakthroughs. Right? There's a really strong humanitarian case for cryptocurrencies because they're universally available without government oversight, and refugees have so little support from the state that they're getting strangled because they can't get access to services. So if you think of Bitcoin as being like open source currency, it's universally available to anybody with a phone. And I mean, where'd I put it, right? This, right? It's the new Mozilla phone.
Right.
Right? So it's running an open source operating system. It's $40 in South America, and it's a perfectly usable first world smartphone. Like, I don't notice that I'm not on an iPhone for anything that I do day to day.
Right.
Right? So when all of these guys are running around with open source telephony, right, cheap tablets, connected to open source currencies, fully participant in the digital economy globally, even though people won't give them a passport.
Right.
This is really big. And there are billions of people in that situation who right now can't do anything internationally because they don't have telecoms and they don't have banking.
Right. But this is happening very soon, and it will be happening.
Oh, it's happening now.
Okay.
Right?
And you think Bitcoin's gone far enough that in your mind the government can't reel it back? They're going to let it go, or they have no choice but to let it go. Maybe the CIA is already using it. Who knows?
Oh, I mean, I guarantee intelligence services are using it because if they're not, they're stupid.
Yeah.
Beating Bitcoin to death at this point would take such an enormous amount of effort.
Not worth it.
I mean, there was a point where it could have been strangled in the crib. It's far past that point now. This is not to say that it couldn't be forced back underground and knocked down to, $5 a coin.
Right.
Right? I mean, you just need to arrest everybody that ever traded on Silk Road, and very quickly Bitcoin will become like, oh, Bitcoin. Right?
Yeah, it might knock it back a bit, definitely. I mean, there's a company called Coinbase in San Francisco, just got $25 million worth of funding for this, and that's what they do. They have 600,000 registered users now that own Bitcoin, and it looks like it's going to be hard to pull that back.
Right? I mean, 50 businesses will take it walk up in Berlin.
Yeah, you were telling me that, yeah.
Yeah, Room 77, right? There's a network around in Kreuzberg. But, right, the thing is that Bitcoin is actually kind of a shit currency. If you just think of it as a currency, because the deflationary thing means that the early movers have massive advantage. So this is great because, my political class, right, the kind of, .com nerd elite, whatever you want to call it, a lot of my political class went into Bitcoin long early. And as a result, a lot of people that I know are getting rich. It's like a .com boom for crypto nerds.
Yeah, I talked about Rick Fogvins. We talked about this.
Yeah,
all the next billionaire oligarchs are going to be these early adopter nerds.